Welcome to this video on understanding the autism diagnosis process, presented by Coastal ABA and the Thriving Parent Project. We will cover what a diagnosis means and what steps to take next. The diagnosis process can be confusing and overwhelming. Many families have questions about who can diagnose, what's required, and what happens next. Remember this key idea. A diagnosis is not the end. It's the starting point for accessing support. An autism diagnosis can be made by primary care providers, such as physicians and psychologists with autism experience. Specialists like developmental pediatricians, neurologists, and neuropsychologists can also diagnose. Importantly, a specialist is not required for insurance purposes. Diagnosis is based on standardized criteria found in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. A critical point is that there is no single test for autism. Clinicians determine a diagnosis using observations, parent interviews, developmental history, and assessment tools if necessary. The clinician decides what tools are appropriate, not the insurance company. The DSM-5 does not require a specific test for diagnosis. While some insurers reference testing, they should not require one specific test. Diagnosis should always be based on clinical judgment and criteria. For young children under age 3, diagnosis can be made through clinical assessment alone. After age 3, additional documentation or testing may be required for continued services. Remember that requirements change as the child develops. Yes, an autism diagnosis is typically required for ABA therapy coverage. Without an autism diagnosis, other behavioral services may still be covered. Diagnosis opens access to more supports.
In Massachusetts, insurance laws mandate coverage for medically necessary autism treatment. Insurers set their own medical necessity criteria and may request documentation. Coverage is mandated, but the criteria can vary.
Insurance can request more information or deny authorization if documentation is unclear. However, diagnosis must follow DSM-5 criteria, and parity laws prevent excessive barriers. Insurers cannot redefine the diagnosis itself. If you are denied coverage, you can submit an internal appeal or request an external review. If the diagnosis is appropriate, families often succeed with appeals. Do not give up, as appeals are a standard part of the process. Key documents needed for authorization requests include the diagnostic report, supporting assessments, if available, and clinical notes. More information means stronger authorization requests. If you don't have full reports, you still have options. You can contact the diagnosing provider for reports, use school evaluations, or gather additional documentation. Providers and families work together on this process. A pediatrician can diagnose autism if they are experienced and trained in autism. This diagnosis is valid for insurance access. Parents often ask if they need a specialist, more testing, or if the diagnosis is sufficient. The good news is that most families already have what they need to get started with support. After receiving a diagnosis, the next steps typically involve finding ABA providers, starting services, and building a treatment plan. However, this is often the point where many families face difficulties. The reality is that a diagnosis does not guarantee immediate services. Families often face wait lists, confusion, and delays in accessing care. Support during this gap is extremely important. At Coastal ABA, we often meet families right after diagnosis or while they are waiting for services. Our focus is to build skills immediately and support parents directly. Don't wait to start making progress. If you have a diagnosis, confirm you have documentation, contact your insurance, and begin reaching out to providers. If you are unsure, speak with your primary care provider to discuss observations. Always start with your pediatrician. It's important to remember that diagnosis is based on clinical expertise. It is valid even without a specialist, and it unlocks access to services. The ultimate goal is not the diagnosis, but what comes next. We help families bridge the gap and take the next step without waiting months. Our program provides immediate support and training during this critical transition period. you can join us at coastalaba.com/parent training.